Welcome back inside the Horseshoe, ladies and gentlemen, for the Monday after Ohio State 43, Maryland 30. A little bit different setting today, gentlemen. It's very, very cold outside on a Monday morning in Columbus, Ohio, as to be expected in late November. So we came inside. So joining you from the press box of Ohio Stadium, that's the 40-year vet Tim May. That's Andy Backstrom. I'm Spencer Holbrook. Tim, not going to spend too much time on Maryland. I don't, a couple days removed.
My Maryland.
Double-digit win. Didn't really seem like a double-digit win, but on the road at Maryland. And now everybody is fully focused on Michigan, so we're not going to spend too much time belaboring the point on Maryland.
Yeah, except, I wrote about this for Lettermen Row this week. I mean, you guys have already published a story. I mean, the big question mark going into this game is running back for both of these teams, Ohio State and Michigan. I think Ohio State's in a much better situation because they've got a proven commodity in Dallin Hayden, freshman. By now he's not a freshman anymore, obviously, as the old saying goes. Meanwhile, there's a question mark about Blake Corum and his availability. But what Dallin Hayden gave this Ohio State offense against Maryland, at 43-30 win, was, as we talked about on Saturday after the game, run to the point of attack, man, and make something happen. And that's something that Travion Henderson was not doing. And Travion Henderson, of course, limped out of that game, came back in for a couple of plays, maybe one or two, and then was gone for good. But Dallin Hayden, in my opinion, is a proven commodity now based on what he's done in several games this year. And meanwhile, you're still considering what is the status of Blake Corum. He was structurally sound, according to Jim Harbaugh in the post-game press conference. His knee was structurally sound. He was good to go. But in a game in which they were trailing, their season on the brink, I think he played one or two plays in the second half and didn't go back in. And that by hook or crook, man, as I called it, a death by 1,000 outcuts.
Yeah.
They moved the ball down and finally won that game with the last second field goal, 9 seconds left field goal. But if the running game is important in this coming game, I think Ohio State in some respects might be in better shape.
See, Andy, I told you we weren't going to spend a lot of time on Maryland. Tim jumped straight to.
Well, that was Maryland. That was taking off what I saw in Maryland and whatever, transposing it to what's coming.
So, as we look back now,
extrapolate's the word I was looking for there.
As we look back a couple days at this game against Maryland, we drove home yesterday. To be frank, I didn't get the chance to watch the replay, but I looked at the advanced numbers. I looked back through my notes. I looked through, what we had down at Lettermen Row, and I looked through the stats. What jumps out at you now, 2 days removed from that, and only 5 days until the big showdown here in the Horseshoe?
Well, I think all season this Ohio State team's been trying to be tough, right? They want to work back to that toughness level to be able to beat a team like Michigan, and I think they've shown it over the last couple of weeks. You see, just Tommy Eichenberg playing with two casts, one on each hand. You have Lathan Ransom breaking his thumb on the first play of the game, then blocking a punt for the second game in a row, Xavier Johnson recovering it. And you've had to play in tough conditions, really. You play in the wind at Northwestern. It was almost tropical storm-like. Then you play in the snow here at the Shoe. And then, the weather wasn't really a factor at Maryland, but still some cold weather towards the end of that game.
Yeah.
And so the toughness component, you had them practicing in the snow the week leading up to Maryland. I think there's just more of an effort to show, hey, we've been in the weight room. We can play through injury. I mean, both these teams are banged up. Michigan has a bunch of injuries as well, and that's kind of the expectation at this point of the season. So I think one thing to take away from that Maryland game is that, look, this team knows that it has to be tough, and it's showing that it is tough. And, to win a game like that, to win a game in several fashions this year like they've done, I think shows that toughness.
Yeah, I'm writing a little piece about that because you heard me ask Zach Harrison as he was walking away after we got to talk to him on Saturday. I go, toughness, that's the word, right? And he said, yeah, basically, yeah. They all remember what happened last year. They all remember the basically getting called out by Michigan coaches and even players about not being tough, et cetera. That is stuck with them. Is stuck in their craw for 12 months. So now the big test is coming.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we haven't done a good job of, not just Lettermen Row, but I think just as a collective, a body collective, I don't think we have used the term toughness as much in the right context as we should have. It's not just getting a yard on 3rd and 1.
No.
Toughness isn't just, hey, They know you're running the ball. You need to be able to run. That's a huge part of it because that's the scheme. That's got to do with the attitude and what happens between those white lines. But toughness is also, Maryland comes back and makes it a 3-point game, and you've got the toughness to be able to go down, get a score, and make sure that you run enough time off the clock to not give them the ball with a chance to win the game, really, because 47 seconds was time, but also you kind of had a feeling that something was going to happen on that Ohio State defensive line. The toughness is, showing up and practicing out in the snow when last year you probably practiced a little bit more indoors because it was a little cold outside. We're inside right now. I guess we're not tough, but like Ohio State.
This wasn't my call.
It won't surprise me to see Ohio State outside practicing again this week because that's what Ryan Day has sent. That's the message Ryan Day sent. Toughness is playing with those broken hands, those sprained ankles. I think, Mayan Williams is going to try his hardest to give it a go this week on a hobbled ankle. Travion Henderson, I'd be stunned if he doesn't try to go with a foot injury. The toughness is not just between the white lines, and I think that's something that we've kind of mistaken this year. When we just talk about, they didn't get that yard, this team isn't tough. I think this team has shown a lot of toughness this year.
No, you can be tough and still get blocked. You know what I mean? You can be tough and still give up a play on, give up a sack or something. I mean, toughness is basically when you're looking back on something and trying to come up with excuses or reasons why something happened. The problem with Ohio State at this moment a year ago is it couldn't play defense to save its life. And that's exactly what happened. You heard Steele Chambers talking about that after, by the way, practicing in the snow last week about it was like cloudy. A lot of things were cloudy about this defense, Ohio State defense a year ago, because a lot of times they weren't lined up right. A lot of times they were running over each other to try to get to a play. Discipline from the standpoint of being gap sound, et cetera, sometimes was lacking. Confusion reigned on that day. It's rare that this defense has been confused this year. They have been snookered because Maryland, I keep reminding everybody, when you're playing against a pretty good defense, the weakest part of any defense is out here on the edges. Maryland tried to get there, and they got there quite a few times. I mean, that little corner route, that Tagovailoa threw about 55 or 60 yards down the field the other day. Beautiful throw, beautiful catch over the shoulder. That's what you got to do against a defense like Ohio State's. That's what you probably maybe have to do against Michigan's. We'll get more into that as the week goes on about Michigan's defense, et cetera. But so then when you're out of position and things don't look right and a linebacker's running over a linebacker trying to get to a play, you not only don't look tough, you look confused. This defense has rarely looked confused this year. They've given up some plays, but they've rarely looked like they were out of position. And that's part and parcel, man, to it. Because I'll never forget, man, 2006 when Ohio State got beat by Florida, Urban Meyer in the BCS championship game. Ohio State's slow, the Big Ten's slow. Well, the Big Ten was slow because Ohio State's defense was kind of like standing there, trying to cover all the waterfront that Florida was throwing at them from an offensive standpoint with Percy Harvin and all those guys. And you always look slow when you're standing still and a guy's running by you. You know what I mean? You always are going to look slow in that. And same thing last year with this defense, the Ohio State defense, is it looked confused. And when you look confused and you're out of position, then a guy blocks you from another angle, you look like you've been out toughed. When in fact, you've also been out schemed. That's what's different about this team, in my opinion, as much as anything else.
Andy, you weren't here to watch what happened last year in Ann Arbor. I'm sure you did watch, though. I think everyone in the college football universe watched. But to see where this team is right now, it seems like they're at a level that they just weren't hitting a year ago. It seems like they're at a level they really weren't even hitting, I don't think, at the beginning of the year. I think they've proven to themselves, above anything, that they're a tough bunch and that they can make plays, they can get things done. They're better defensively. When the going gets tough, they can do things offensively. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think so. And I think what's really interesting about this game is that, there's so many parallels between Ohio State and Michigan. Even last week, Illinois pushes them to the brink. Maryland makes Ohio State sweat out 4 quarters. Both teams win. Really, the whole top 4 had a scare last week. But even with this season, right, the whole storyline is, can Ohio State be tough? Can they run the football effectively? Can they win in the elements? For Michigan, on their side of things, it's how effective can that pass offense be when it needs to be? Can J.J. McCarthy now win them a game when he needs to? And last week, I mean, it was more the kicking game that won them anything and the defense. But, that's what's really interesting about this game is that it's been trending toward this moment. How effectively can Ohio State run the football? But also, like Tim was saying, if you're going to attack Ohio State's defense, how well are they going to be able to throw the ball against this Ohio State defense? And the secondary is probably the weak point of this defense right now. They did give up 6 plays of 20 or more yards through the air to Maryland. And now I think Maryland has better receivers and a better quarterback than Michigan does, just the level of talent there. But it's still a storyline this week. Just as we're focused on can Ohio State run the ball, and we're focused on Dallin Hayden and will Mayan Williams play. For the Michigan side of things, can they throw the ball against Ohio State's secondary? And I think that's what their challenge is.
Yeah, and not just secondary, but underneath. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, this death by 1,000 outcuts is my my little line there. I'm trying to be cute with that line, but they rarely ever throw the ball down the field. And then last week, against Illinois, man, they had a play on that 4th down. They decided to go for it, threw the ball deep down the left sideline. That ball was perfectly thrown. Receiver goes up and he's got 2 defenders around him, but the ball goes right through his hands. I'm talking about with Michigan. And so that's what Michigan has been fighting all year, is for it not to come down, in my opinion, for it not to come down to their passing game. But their passing game is more like nickel and dime than it is, 50-cent pieces throwing down the field or silver dollars. But that's what's going to be interesting, is if Ohio State can make them have to throw the ball. That's the big if.
It's almost like, is Ohio State tough enough? Well, is Michigan too tough? Because Michigan wants to bully you and run the ball.
Yeah.
But if Ohio State's run defense, the way it has all year, shows up and puts on the field a product that stops Michigan's running game in its tracks, Michigan's going to have to prove that it's not just a bully ball team.
Yeah.
We've seen bully ball teams before. You look at the old editions of Georgia when it would run against Alabama. You look at the old editions of Notre Dame when it would run against teams that like to throw the ball. You almost become too big of a bully, and somebody finally punches you in the mouth and you don't know how to respond. And so I'm very curious about that from the Michigan side, especially if Blake Corum's not healthy. Donovan Edwards, I don't know how much he is between the tackles as much as he is, almost like a scat back where, you're out of the backfield.
Available.
Yeah. So you wonder how healthy he is.
And the freshmen, don't confuse their freshman with Dallin Hayden, at least, but the Stokes kid, at least production-wise.
Yeah, C.J. Stokes played a little bit, but they've got issues in that running game. If you're relying on J.J. McCarthy to throw against a Jim Knowles defense that I promise has not shown Michigan everything, that has some tricks up its sleeve, we've heard it all year, man, I'm not sure if that's a winning proposition for the folks in Ann Arbor.
I hope he pulled a few things out against Maryland, because things were getting kind of iffy.
But at the same time, on the other side of that coin, if you're Ohio State, you need to be able to run the ball, because you can't rely on C.J. Stroud to throw the ball 50 times. Maybe you can. Honestly, maybe you can.
Hey.
But you've got to be able to do some things, because Ohio State's in 2nd and long and 3rd and long far too often.
This is my favorite part about covering college football anymore. It's unpredictable. I mean, like you were just talking about, back in the day, man, Ohio State jumped in the I formation or whatever, and Archie Griffin ran the ball, and Pete Johnson scored the touchdowns. That was Woody's way of doing things. And occasionally they would throw the ball 3 or 4 or 5 times a game. Cornelius Green said they used to practice ridiculously throwing the ball, and they'd get into games, especially the game, and not throw the ball. So it was crazy. But now with the highest, modern day, this situation going into this weekend is you do whatever it takes to win this game, get the W. Ohio State going into this game, and we'll talk about it more as the week goes on, is better equipped to have a balanced attack than Michigan is on paper and on video. If you watch them on video, they just look better at different times. They're capable of both running to a certain extent, but also throwing the ball. Michigan hasn't proven that it's capable in both respects, except on Saturday with the season on the brink against Illinois. They stepped up and got it done. Yeah, it was with field goals, but they got it done, played the percentages, and kick a field goal with 9 seconds left. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and so now I hate to simplify it, Tim, but you just kind of roll everything out there. And Andy, this week, like Tim just said, you do whatever you can to win. Ohio State, they're already through the band practice, okay? The band practice is done. It was a lot of fun.
Probably see Mayan Williams playing the snare drum.
Yeah,
It didn't look too bad.
Sunday night, Ohio State had a lot of fun. There's a lot of traditions this week. Senior tackle, you're going to go through a lot of different things. Another champions dinner, the last one. You've got Thanksgiving to worry about. At the end of the day, and I hate to make it like this is not Thanksgiving week. This is Michigan week. And that sucks for a lot of people involved, especially the players and coaches at Ohio State and Michigan. Hello.
Hey, excuse me. Hey, how'd you do at the scramble?
Hey, man, we're doing a video here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
We canceled.
Right, we are absolutely leaving that in. Tim just got accosted about his terrible performance in the golf scramble.
Yeah. No, we canceled, actually.
So, because it's too cold?
Yeah.
That's why we're inside. See, it was your idea to come inside. All right, back to the show. It sucks. It sucks for a lot of people, like I said. Michigan, Ohio State players, coaches, families involved. It's not Thanksgiving week, though. This is Michigan week. You do whatever you do whatever the hell it takes to win this game. And that's just the bottom line.
Man, the guys out in West Ohio, they think different than me. I'm looking forward to that turkey.
I'm going to be enjoying Thanksgiving on Thursday and Friday.
Here's the thing. Like you said, there's angst going on in every big-time Buckeye fan's stomach right now. Maybe not a good time to sit down in front of a huge meal. You're exactly right. I mean, everything's on the line, just like it was a year ago, except even more so now. Ohio State had one loss under its belt going into this game last year.
So did Michigan.
Yeah, but I'm talking about Ohio State fans. Bottom line is they know what's going on. Imagine being Ryan Day right now. You've focused everything on getting back to this moment with a shot and being improved compared to a year ago. Now, you're 6 days away or 5 days away from stepping up, having your team step up and prove it, right? That all of it. And just think about the pressure that's there, not just on the players and the coaches, but Ryan Day. I mean, Ryan Day doesn't want to go 0-2 against Michigan. I mean, I'm talking about 2 straight losses against Michigan.
Especially going to the Big House next year.
In many respects, I talk about this with John U. Bacon, a big-time Michigan historian and stuff. In many respects, this is a referendum game. Has Michigan turned that corner and is now the game back in play? I mean, for the first 20 years of the 21st century, it was not. It was Ohio State's domain. But when you win 2 in a row, it's a big deal. So that's the challenge Ohio State's got in front of it this week.
Yeah, I mean, just as you said, Ohio State's going to do whatever it takes to win, and maybe that's C.J. Stroud throwing 50 times. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But same thing for Michigan. They're going to do whatever it takes to win. And
yeah.
I don't know what the health is of Blake Corum. As Tim mentioned, Jim Harbaugh said he's structurally sound, but I'm sure he wouldn't say that he's out, if he was. So we're going to see a lot of tactics there with what comes out of the press conferences this week. But also, if he isn't healthy, expect J.J. McCarthy to run a lot. This is a game where you throw everything out there and you show what you haven't showed as much before. And I know he's run before, but maybe they lean on him even more. Ohio State has had a little trouble with defending the quarterback run at times this year. So that's something to look out for. And there's ways to offset deficiencies in your offense by just playing to the strengths of the players that you do have. And JJ's legs are definitely a strength for Michigan. And even the tight end, Luke Schoonmaker. I mean, he wasn't totally healthy the last couple of weeks, but if he's healthy and ready to go against Ohio State, that's another player to look for because, the tight ends at Maryland gave Ohio State some problems last week. As good as the defense played when it needed to, I mean, C.J. Dupre had that hurdle. He had a touchdown in the back corner of the end zone. They have some size, and size has given Ohio State a little bit of trouble the last couple of weeks. Remember the tight end from Indiana that mossed Cam Brown in the end zone there? So just something to look out for. They do have some weapons, and while they might not be the strongest at throwing the ball, even if they don't have Blake Corum, they can still move the ball on offense.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the game of the century, too, for a reason, man. They're both undefeated. They're 2-3. They will be 2-3 probably again in the college football playoff rankings. A trip to the Big Ten championship game is on the line, meaning contention for a Big Ten championship is on the line, and then also a confirmed spot in the college football playoff rankings. They're going to let it all hang out. And that's what's funny. Coaches these days whereas Woody and Bo didn't let it all hang out, Ryan Day and even Jim Harbaugh, in their own way, have no problems with it all hang out when everything's on the line.
The last time Ryan Day put an entire program on, notice as far as giving a year to get back to a moment to correct some wrong that he realized had happened in his program. Ohio State loses to Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl 2019. It spends an entire offseason drilling that game into the brain of every player in the Woody, and had to win a lot of games to get back to Clemson.
Not that many.
Not that many.
About
because
half
of
a
COVID.
season's worth.
Yeah, you're
COVID.
right. You're actually right, Tim.
Yeah, I know I'm right.
So had to win, I think, 6 games, and then got to face Clemson again. Ryan Day, this offseason, when he faced Clemson there in 2020, they terrorized Clemson. That game was a blow. It wasn't even close. Ryan Day put an entire program effort into beating Michigan and getting back to doing the business the way Urban Meyer did it. There's a reason that his Pine House is not Urban Meyer's Pine House. It's Urban Meyer's 7-0 Pine House. You don't lose to Michigan. Number one rule of having the job. Ryan Day knows that. He's put an entire year into Saturday, and now it's finally here. And, I'm really excited, but I think the thing that I'm most excited for with this week is Michigan fans think they're going to lose to Ohio State because they weren't good enough against Illinois, and Ohio State fans think they're going to lose to Michigan because they weren't good enough against Maryland. And that makes it all the better, because if both teams would have blown out respective opponents, Illinois and Maryland, we would be sitting here and everybody would be confident they were going to win. Now everybody's almost confident they're going to lose. And I love that. I think it's the best way to go into this game.
See, I'm not picking up. I know where you're going. I'm not being a contrarian. I'm not picking that vibe at all, because when it's 2020 is great to look back on, in your rearview mirror. And this past weekend proved to be survival for everybody in the top 4. Georgia, 16-6 over Kentucky. Ohio State, 43-30 with their last touchdown coming with 9 seconds left on a strip sack. Michigan having to, you can sit there and go, Michigan had it all the way. Baloney. They're kicking a field goal with 9 seconds left in windy conditions. As good as Jake Moody is, that's still a challenge. It wasn't a chip shot field goal either. It was, 35 or whatever yards. And then, of course, TCU kicks a field goal on the last play against Baylor when they run onto the field.
Fire drill.
Exactly. And it was all about getting the W. Just ask Tennessee. Tennessee got killed by South Carolina. Spencer Rattler. Just think if Spencer Rattler was still at Oklahoma, I'm sure all the fans are going that too. But the point is, this was all about survival. And fans, they're going to have their angst.
Oh, yeah.
Based on the way the game went last year in Ann Arbor, Ohio State fans are going to have their angst until they get their satisfaction. The same with this football team. But the other team, as John Cooper used to like to say, practices too. You know what I mean? That's why this has a chance to be a real classic, because it's 2 contrasting styles going at each other. And they both had their problems. They both had their challenges this year. But both of them struggled against Maryland. Both of them. That's the harbinger game if there is one. And then the other thing about Ohio State, and I'm just throwing this in there because Ohio State's proven to me from a toughness standpoint, it is up to the challenge, because several games this year they've had to win the game in the fourth quarter. And that's when you really judge a team. What does it do in the fourth quarter with the season on the line? And Ohio State has stepped up in several challenges, Notre Dame, Penn State, Northwestern even, because of the weather. And then this past week against at Maryland, you had to get it done in the fourth quarter, and this team did that. But so did Michigan against Illinois.
Yeah, it's funny, Andy, because we've seen Ohio State struggle, get to the fourth quarter with a deficit or in a close game. Michigan really hadn't had to do that at all this year, as much as maybe we thought they might, because of that schedule. The 3 non-conference games were bad, and then they kind of ran through the Big Ten schedule pretty easily. They were finally challenged. So I think this is a good thing for both of them.
No, they were challenged by Maryland.
I agree, but
that was a hell of a game.
I'm just talking about They were facing a deficit entering the fourth quarter.
Okay.
So it's interesting now. Both of these teams have truly been challenged in the fourth quarter. It's not like one of these teams is going in. 2019, we kind of asked ourselves. We kind of asked ourselves, had Ohio State been challenged yet? They didn't really get challenged at Michigan either. But now we know both of these teams have been challenged and they're ready to go.
Yeah, playing Maryland is probably the best thing that could have happened to Ohio State going into this Michigan game. Not just because of the way the game went, but because the kind of offense they were facing. The Maryland offense was in the top half of the country, and probably is even better than that number tells, because they've had some injuries with Talia Tagovailoa, and then also just other places on that offense, and they had 2 dud games leading into this one. So that offense is a pretty good offense, especially when you compare it to the rest of the Big Ten. So to face any team for this Ohio State defense, it was a pretty good tune-up for facing Michigan. Now, I know Maryland throws the ball a lot more than Michigan throws the ball.
Yeah.
But still, just in general, to face that kind of adversity, to have a game on the road, play actually 3 of the last 4 on the road, then come back here, it's pretty good preparation for a game like this. And yeah, I agree. Like Michigan's had some adversity too, even though that non-conference schedule was way easier than Ohio State's. They have played Michigan. Michigan had played, Maryland, which played them tough, and then of course last week against Illinois. I mean, Illinois. I wish they could make the Big Ten championship in some way, because they just play good defense, and it's just old school football. And the Big Ten West is a mess, and to think that Iowa's probably coming out of that instead of a team like Illinois, which somehow lost its opener to Indiana. It's just tough. But yeah, again, I think both programs have faced adversity, maybe in different ways, but I think it leads up to a great game. That's why the spread is only 8 points, and that's why it's the first time this season that Ohio State's a single-digit favorite.
Isn't it amazing that Iowa is going to maybe win the Big Ten West?
I don't want to talk about it, Tim.
I mean, that's nuts. The Iowa team we saw here a few weeks ago can win the Big Ten West. That's crazy. West is a mess.
The West is a mess, but for now, we don't care, because the game is finally here. Rivalry week is here. Ohio State, Michigan on the field in the Horseshoe at noon on Saturday. College Game Day will be here. Big Noon Saturday will be here. Lettermen Row will be here. Tim May, the 40-year vet, he'll be in the press box here. Andy Backstrom, he'll be in the press box here. I'll be there. Matt Parker down on the field taking photos for the clash, maybe of the century. This is a big one, folks. It's going to be a lot of fun. Stick with Lettermen Row for full coverage of this week and the entire season of Ohio State football. If you want more coverage, $10 until next August. That is a heck of a deal. You get the Michigan game now. You get potentially Big Ten championship game, college football playoff, signing day, the whole summer of recruiting, spring practice, all through training camp.
What a bargain.
I can't say enough about that. Christmas is right around the corner. Come get your $10 gifts for people. The gift of Lettermen Row. We're trying to provide as much content as we can in the build up to number 2 Ohio State versus number 3 Michigan. It's the game you have all been waiting for. I'm very excited to provide coverage for you all to be able to tell the stories of this game with these two right here and with Matt Parker. Again, that's Tim, that's Andy. Thanks for watching the Monday after Ohio State 43, Maryland 30. It's officially rivalry week. Let's get into it.